this time 3 years ago, Alberta was devastated by severe flooding that destroyed entire neighborhoods right here in Calgary, while the worst damage was seen in High River, which is about an hour drive from downtown Calgary. And as 13,000 residents fled their homes and left their belongings behind, the RCMP took it upon themselves to raid houses and confiscate legal owners' guns. I'm talking about hundreds of licensed guns stored legally and under the terms of the Firearms Act. To most, it was an act that exercised the authority of the RCMP and went far beyond making sure that the town was safe and evacuated. They seized the property of innocent civilians and caused unnecessary damage to their homes. They entered the homes specifically to take guns without warrants, which also weren't reported to a justice of the peace, which is required by law. And this isn't the first and not necessarily the last time that citizens have been punished for owning legal guns, protecting themselves or their property with a firearm, or challenging gun laws peacefully. I've talked about Bruce Montague, a former gunsmith, and his mission to challenge gun laws in court by letting his license expire. He and his wife felt that new legislation brought in by the government that required the registration of some firearms was unconstitutional. What ensued was 6 months of time served in jail, the forfeiture of his gun collection that was worth well over $100,000, and the possibility of losing his home to civil forfeiture under Ontario law. And then there was Ian Thompson, who was a former gun instructor that fired 3 shots with a .38 caliber revolver to scare 4 masked men from his home that were throwing firebombs and yelling death threats. Nobody was injured, but he was taken to court with 4 charges, one of careless use of a firearm, another pointing a firearm, and 2 counts of improper storage. He was acquitted, but was still taken to court in a battle that lasted 2 years over self-defense. Reclassification can also result in some ridiculous consequences. In Canada, there are 3 classifications of firearms: non-restricted, restricted, and prohibited. The reclassification of guns in Canada is usually for ridiculous reasons that involve politics or simply because a gun looks scary. And when the government decided to reclassify 2 weak .22 caliber rifles to prohibited, it meant that the owners of those guns could face up to 10 years in jail for being in possession of the guns. And all a reclassification of guns is another seizure of property. It's an authorized gun grab, unlike the one in High River, but more of the same. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Well, it's really not a rarity in Canada. Here in this nation, legal responsible gun owners who are granted their firearms licenses from the RCMP are treated like second-class citizens. When the government decides to change the rules or valid self-defense measures are taken, they're more likely than not to be treated as criminals. And under the Liberal government, promises have been made to change and enforce new gun rules. Some of those changes include background checks, keeping records of firearms purchases, and showing a valid permit when purchasing a gun. Except they didn't take into consideration that criminals are rarely legal gun owners, and they'll get their hands on a gun if they want one. They don't have to show a license to an illegal gun dealer. Canada simply takes the wrong approach by keeping an eye on legal gun owners when what policymakers really should be doing is focusing on the real criminals. For the Rebel.media, I'm Holly Nicholas.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.